Welcome to TYT Sports, everybody. Jason Rubin here with you. 2015 is off to a fantastic start. UFC 182 is our first topic of discussion. We're beaming in Ben Goldstein from Cage Potato. Ben, how are we doing today?
Thank you very much for having me on again. I appreciate it.
Of course. We love having you on. We love talking about the UFC, especially a fight like that of Bones Jones versus Daniel Cormier, which was hyped up to almost an unreachable level. But when you watch the fight, it went all 5 rounds. It was extremely exciting. Do you think, before we get into the details of the fight, do you think this fight lived up to the hype?
Well, you know, it was a great fight without question, but I think fans were hoping for the fight of the century, just like you said, it was built up with all this hype, or at least they were expecting a more competitive match. You know, Cormier was built up to be this guy that was going to give Jones, you know, the test of his career. It was going to be his greatest challenge. And it just didn't work out that way. That didn't turn out to be true. You know, outside of some really effective moments that Cormier had in rounds 2 and 3, this fight was dominated by Jon Jones, as many of us expected. You know, the long-range striking from Jones, those fast oblique kicks, the side kicks to Cormier's legs, and of course his wrestling. You know, Daniel Cormier, we all know he's a former Olympic wrestler, and Jones was able to dump him on his back multiple times with seemingly little effort during the fight. You know, Cormier, he ran out of gas in those championship rounds. He had very little to offer. So it wasn't the Clash of the Titans fight of the century that we had maybe hoped for. But to look at a different way, if you're talking about hype, you know, the hype around Jon Jones, that's absolutely real. And that was proven once again on Saturday night. He's the greatest fighter in the world, #1 pound-for-pound fighter right now, and you can make an argument for him being the greatest MMA fighter who's ever lived.
Right, and I mean that seems like the consensus as we go as Jones's career continues as at least the best pound-for-pound fighter, and as you said before, a couple of title defenses away from really being thrown into that conversation. Now, getting into the more technical details of the fight, we did see Cormier come out in the beginning, and it seemed like he was trying to get as close as he possibly could to Jones to avoid that reach, those kicks that Jones always throws at the competition that he sees in the ring. I'm sorry, the octagon. But it just seemed like Jones outclassed him the entire way through, besides, of course, the end of the fight where we saw a nice little crotch shot, which was a crotch chop shot. What is this exactly called? The crotch chop gesture, that's it.
Crotch chop thing, yeah.
Yes.
It's a classic heel villain move, yeah.
Of course. And but again, back to the technical side of things. What did you see in the fight that you liked from Bones Jones, and what did you see, if much, that you liked from Daniel Cormier?
Well, you know, I was actually surprised at how Cormier's spirit, you know, seemed to break late in the fight. You know, his coaches were screaming at him, you know, do you want this? And he could barely muster a response. He looked glum and defeated, and this is a guy who we thought was mentally unbreakable. But he didn't look that way in the fight against Jones. And, you know, we were talking about takedowns, as you mentioned. During the 5th round, it seemed like Cormier had accepted that he was going to lose, and he was only trying to earn a moral victory by just getting one takedown against Jon Jones. And he spent the entire round doing it, and he did it. He lifted Jones over his head. He threw him to the mat. Right. But he spent the entire round doing that, you know, instead of maybe swinging for the fences, hoping for a knockout. So it seemed like he was really mentally defeated by that point. Whereas, you know, Jon Jones pitched a perfect game. His striking was perfect. Clinch work was perfect. Wrestling was better than the Olympians. So, you know, greatest performance of Jon Jones's career, possibly, and very demoralizing for Dan Cormier.
What did you think about Jones's behavior after the fight? Personally, I'm a huge fan of trash talkers. I'm curious your thoughts on these kind of things. These guys are fighters, so.
Yeah. Of course, and I was glad that he didn't sort of like turn around after the fight and hug Daniel Cormier. He said, "Oh, we're just doing this to hype the fight." He expressed some serious animosity towards Daniel Cormier. He apologized it too. He said, "Yeah, I'm sorry for being classless." But that's who Jon Jones really is. He's incredibly competitive. He's going to be a villain now. That's probably the best thing for him because fans never really bought him as a good guy. You know, I think that the turning point was that leaked SportsCenter footage back in August, where you really saw what he was like when he didn't know, if the cameras were on or not, and the things he was saying to Daniel Cormier. You know, the mask was finally unveiled, and now he doesn't have to pretend anymore. You know, he's going to be the guy that you love to hate, the guy who taunts his opponents before, during, and after the fight. And he'll probably be even more successful because of it.
He's America's favorite villain, and we always look forward to his fights. Ben, thank you so much for coming on. Guys, make sure to check out Ben over at cagepotato.com for some really, really great insight into the UFC fight recaps. Just about anything news-related that you can find when it comes to UFC, and especially more villain action from Jones going forward. So don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.